Get started. If you could grab your seat. So my name's Nick Gerhart. We're here to, I guess, talk about artificial intelligence and impact on insurance. And given it's a risk symposium, kind of the risks and opportunities as well. So I'm going to let each of these esteemed panelists introduce themselves, and then I'm going to start with questions. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions too. So, Dr. Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Elena Mitchell. I am the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs in the Zimpelman College of Business here at Drake. My area in teaching and research is in information systems and technology and analytics. And if we're talking about AI, in 2019, I co-chaired the task force that created the AI major that we have here at Drake now. So.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Yu Yu. I'm a senior data scientist at AllianceBernstein. So basically, I lead different various kinds of data science projects to help the firm on various sides, distribution as well as investment. And before joining AB, I was a psychometrician intern at College Board for 2 years. So helping on the computer-based test, if you ever take the SAT and on the computer version, and if there's an item, pushed to you, possibly there's a contribution for me behind the model. So basically, I have a PhD in psychometrics and quantitative psychology. So all what I do focus on is on the statistical and modeling side. Yeah, thank you.
So Scott and I are clearly the dumb guys
Well,
up here.
I was going to say, I sure am glad I'm following that. Jeez. Both impressive. I very much appreciate it. I come from the business world. Background-wise, I was a lawyer for Transamerica, actually general counsel for several business units at Transamerica, then became CEO of its insurance operations for life, P&C, and non-insurance products. Spent some time at McKinsey, focusing the same thing, and now I'm a CEO of a deep learning powered predictive analytics platform where we provide P&C carriers with loss predictions, individual loss predictions, all at the top of the funnel with just a name and address to affect the profitability of the carrier and the customer experience.
Great. So my first question is going to be for all of you, and more of a level setting question. So artificial intelligence, or AI, is kind of a buzzword in my mind. Obviously, it encompasses a lot of different disciplines. I think our audience is probably familiar with most of those disciplines. I'd like you to explain what AI is to you, kind of your job or your role, and how do you think of AI as it relates to the insurance industry and its impact more broadly? So Scott, I'll start with you and then we'll work backwards.
I'll start off with, I'm a proponent of AI, and I don't know what people here, obviously you should be wary of things, but AI is going to revolutionize and is revolutionizing the insurance industry in this conference. It's doing much more elsewhere. But I truly believe, as an industry that has worked on predicting risk since its beginning, we're at an age now where we're going to be able to assess and manage risk better than ever before. And that impacts all stakeholders, those that are owners of insurance companies and the customers of those insurance companies as they get better, relevant experiences. AI, which I agree, I look now at AI as like an umbrella overseeing all these other really specific areas. Ours being deep learning, which is part of machine learning, which you could go back and forth. But it's important to our business because it's enabling us to ingest trillions of behavioral predictors and to be able to build out footprints or profiles on every US adult and take those behavioral footprints and correlate them to insurance outcomes that are core to the business. Claims frequency, claims severity, and loss cost, and being able to do all that before you even get to the quoting stage. So maybe a little long-winded, but I'm excited about AI.
You go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I want to echo with Scott about some of the terms. So AI, artificial intelligence, it is an umbrella term. So under it, there's different areas, different applications, different specific techniques. And to me, machine learning is a subset of AI. And then NLP, natural language processing, is a subset of machine learning. So machine learning basically, it's statistical modeling, probably the term we used about a decade ago. So I'm sure if you're doing some of the pricing model, you're evaluating risk, you are using AI. And AI is just a buzzword in the past few years, especially since the release of large language models, GPT. Now everyone's kind of very excited about it. So on the specific applications, for me, I work with different teams. So I have specific applications on the investment side, generate investment signals from financial documents, or on the distribution side, like we surface information from news or clients' websites to better prioritize our sales efforts, or on the operation side, maybe on compliance, help our own employees to better understand the firm documents by building a QA app. So that's the general applications I work on. For insurers, so I think there's different areas that can be leveraged. For example, if you process your claims, I'm sure there's a lot of manual processing at those moments. But with those development of the techniques, nowadays, it is much easier to automate this process. You can directly extract the information, save them in the database. Then your manual work can be saved. You can focus more on the more important work. And you don't need to stuck in, just fill in the Excel sheets. So, and on the modeling side, you have pricing models. You need to estimate what are the right premium you should put with your clients. And you have the risk models. You need to estimate about what type of risk involved, what kind of asset allocations you could do for it. And there's also on the operational side, I'm sure, you deal with clients, you chat with your customers, and for chatbots or for email alerts, all those things can be automated or leverage part of the AI like products you can use. So that's kind of your use cases for the insurers. Yeah, thank you.
So I agree with my panelists here. AI is an umbrella term. If we define it at the top level, I would say it's where we're designing information systems or hardware to do things that we're used to humans doing, right? So if we think about, we're used to learning based on experience, and we're used to making decisions, and we're used to recognizing patterns, right? So AI is doing that. And it's a computer doing that instead of a human. And there's all the subcategories: machine learning, natural language processing, expert systems, all of those things that have been mentioned already. Here at Drake, I would say we think about AI as a really interdisciplinary area. So our students are for sure covering the technology piece, but they're also understanding the business role in AI. They're also exploring, the legal parts, right? So law school perspective on that too. But then also kind of the humanities perspective and nature of the brain, right? Like in order to design a system that works like the brain, we have to understand how the brain works too. So all of those pieces kind of come into it here at Drake. And then if I think about the insurance industry, last year Accenture actually put out a report that said insurers could increase their profits by 20% if they make heavy investments into AI. So I certainly think that there is an opportunity for impact there.
Well, Scott, first question for you on an individual basis. So property casualty markets obviously under a lot of stress. If anyone's in that market, we see in that and live in that. Pinpoint was created to really help those carriers with risk selection, like you said, top of the funnel. A lot of carriers get criticized because their answers to this point has been taking rate, exiting markets, and we've all seen those articles, I'm sure. How do you think carriers could use tools like yours and even others to maybe avoid just those as their ordinary course of business? And do you think carriers are using those tools, I guess, to their best leverage?
So the last question first. No, I don't think we as an industry are using them to the best. We're exploring and sometimes running parallel with our current processes to see what's going on. As an insurance person, I don't know if there's other insurance people in here, hopefully there are, exits of states, exits of geographies or lines, to me really gets under my skin because we are here to provide peace of mind to people, and leaving a state because it's an unprofitable state, and the only levers we have today are rate increases or leave. And the regulators are pushing back on rate increases, which it's hard to argue, especially look at Florida. With the rate increases that have gone on there, it was probably about time that somebody pushed back and said no. But not having additional levers and really using legacy thought, and by the way, I'm not demeaning anything, it's my business too. this is where a Pinpoint and others could come in and really help, because there are other levers. You can be more intelligent in your risk stratification and risk selection, and you can do it and be more inclusive as opposed to excluding people. If you're smarter, you can make better pricing decisions. If you're smarter, you can make better underwriting decisions. And we don't, and I won't get into the company too much, we don't play as Pinpoint in filed rating and pricing models. We make them work better. We don't play in the underwriting models. We make them work better. If at the top of the funnel, before anybody even fills out an application or just after filling out an application, you know the most profitable, the least profitable consumers, then you can make better decisions on what pipes to put them down. And they get a more relevant experience for that. So I think if we're smarter up front, as opposed to refiling our rating models, which is another thing to do. I actually coach, don't do that yet. See what, sometimes it's garbage in, garbage out. Do a better job of selecting those folks. And when I say select, I mean understanding where should they go. And certainly there are some that won't fit your risk appetite, but that's the better way to stay in business. You know, when I looked at California and talked to some folks, if you're smarter, the geography doesn't matter. You'll be able to know what that individual is or is not going to do, and you can make decisions and not exit an entire market because you're having a bad experience somewhere else. So a bit of a soapbox, but I do believe that, you know, risk assessment and management has caused a lot of the profitability issues. Also, some of the newer insurance companies thinking top-line growth came at the loss of profitability, and that's a false dichotomy. It's great to get 1 million policyholders in, but you know, there's a profitability aspect
Yeah,
too.
growth at any cost may not work in that model.
But no, I think it's just that. It's utilizing platforms, and in our case, for mine, upfront, just to be smarter. And it's a much better and fairer way to look at folks than current, in my opinion, than current methods like credit and things like that.
Great. Dr. Mitchell, next question for you. As a professor and researcher, you get to deal with a lot of students and people, probably read a lot of interesting things. How do you see artificial intelligence impacting the education of the next generation of insurance professionals? And how can current professionals kind of get up to speed and learn themselves?
So depending on who you talk to, they're going to have different opinions on, you know, the role of AI and how it impacts industries and all of that. I, like Scott, am a proponent of AI, right? My students are using the tools and they're getting the experiences. We have a lot of different classes where they're, you know, sometimes it's not even using a tool, but sometimes it's exploring how is AI going to impact the trucking industry and society overall, right? Like that happens in one of our ethics classes. In my class last semester, I asked my students, you know, what tools they were using. 100% of we were talking specifically about text analytics and natural language processing. 100% of my class had a Grammarly account, and they were using that to improve their writing, right? 100% of my class had used ChatGPT because I made them. But they had already been playing with it before, right? So they're already exposing themselves to these tools and seeing how they can use them to make their work better, improve what they're doing, and so I think that's important. At the grad level, this is also happening. In one of my classes, my students use Microsoft Azure to develop a model, a predictive model to be able to tell if they would have lived or died on the Titanic, right? So they're able to put in their age and demographics and family information, and then out spits the outcome of whether or not they would have survived. So they're all getting practice with these tools, undergrad and grad, and I think it's possible for everybody to be able to try that out. I would say just from a change perspective, like this is obviously impacting education, this is obviously impacting many industries, insurance too, but it's important to be able to explore the tools and how we can use them, and so we're used to change in education, and we're used to kind of figuring that out. There are certainly some professors who say, like, we will not use this, right? But I think that that's a mistake. I think that we have to start using these tools and figuring out how to, this is the safe spot to learn them, right? So this is where we need to do that.
it's funny because a lot of carriers have taken the same approach of we're not going to use those tools, which I kind of think is dangerous because you're going to fall pretty far behind. As a data scientist, you're at a very interesting intersection of artificial intelligence, data, and insurance. How do you see data science emerging as a discipline that insurance companies could rely on? And how should carriers work with data scientists in relation to their actuarial team?
Sure. I will answer the last question first also. So data science is a pretty young team at AllianceBernstein. So I joined like 2018. It was created 2017. So we went through a lot of challenges in order to follow the most like advanced technologies as well as be able to leverage them. So I think I will answer this question in several aspects. First is data. Data is always the key points. You can outsource in data, you can leverage internal data. Either way, it need to be high quality data, or else it's garbage in, garbage out, especially for internal data. When I first work on some of the projects, I wouldn't see what type of projects. And I think that the collaboration team, they were very confident. They have a lot of data. And then when I look at it, they only have 3 years of data digitalized and recorded. It wasn't good enough at all for a time series model. And also, when you record the data, there's different type of things you may not think of in the initial stage, and you need to revise. And then these 3 years of data may not be that enough because the data changes across the 3 years on what they want to collect. So I think for insurers, for the carriers who now are thinking about incorporating this process, they need to think about what are data available and what type of data they could improve in order to capture more for their future process, because this will be a long-term process to achieve the state they want. And the second part is about the model. On the model, there's definitely more in the middle between data and the model, but I just jumped to the model side. So it's about, you can leverage the commercial versions, some of the, APIs. Then you will think about data security involved in it. Or you can develop your own in-house models. But for those, you need to have the platform or the computations, also the talent who can use them on the right platform. And for example, now it's large language models are very, very hot topic. But people are mainly using the OpenAI's APIs. When they think about to customize a version themselves can use, they want to use open source, then you really need large GPUs. So when you need large GPUs, you need to think about you have your own cluster or own machine or use cloud. So those are all the small points like carriers possibly need to think about what type of support they can give to this team if they have the talent. They want to embark in this area. And then it's about the deliverables. Deliverables is a kind of what products are most important, most useful for the team they support to. It could be simply email alert. It could be dashboard. It could be some specific data saved in the database they can pull for their specific modeling process. So I think all those, if you have a framework in your mind, it will be easier to leverage them than just directly jump in the question, find the solutions. Yeah.
The next few questions are for all of you, so I'll start with you, Scott, on the first one and work our way back this way. When you think about the use of AI, there's perception and reality. We've talked a little bit about how it's being used today, but could you share with the audience any use cases that they'd find interesting?
Well, I hope they find it interesting. It's not what I find interesting. I do think the top of mind for me is the risk area, because that's what's causing a lot of the issues. So there's two ways to look at that. AI is going to help us in many areas. This risk assessment, risk management, customer service, customer experience, fraud detection, health analysis, you name it. It can just keeps going on in terms of where that is. But I think the things that have impressed me the most are those that can do this risk assessment using data that has not been used in insurance before and making insurance companies better. Because like I said, it helps everybody if an insurance company's better and more stable. I think the fraud detection is really powerful. in insurance, not because I think everybody's committing a fraud, but being on top of that and being able to triage and do all that is really important to me. And then I agree with the large language models being popular, but I will say it has made people better performers. It's taking that first draft of a marketing piece. It's taking a press release and having it pushed out by ChatGPT, or it would have taken a week for somebody to do that, and instead they get their first draft in 15 seconds. It's a first draft. At least that's our coaching. And then you work with it. To me, the human mind is amazing, but it's amazing because it can be so creative and really understand what's going on. And I think having the capacity and capabilities to get done with the foundational work quickly allows us to free up our minds to do what we're good at and enjoy.
You?
Yeah, sure. I will share two specific examples. One is we use in practice in production, and the second is in the ideation process. So first one is our team collaborate with the distribution side, and we have different intelligence tools created for the client groups. One is for retails, specifically called RA Intelligence. Basically, we would process large number of news and capture those specifically on RA merge and acquisitions, because they want to understand how the RA's teams change, so they can have the right information when they need to contact them, and for sales pitch or for the correct information processing. So basically, we create a dashboard processing this news. Then there's a team of 3 persons who are on top of the news search each week, and now they don't need to do it manually. They just need to put out their dashboard, and they can look at all the news like today or yesterday or even last month if they don't have time to check it in the past few weeks. So this is one of the examples that's really speed up their work, and they don't need to do the manually Google for like a few hours a day. Yeah, second example is we collaborate with Equitable. Equitable holds our like 2/3 of the shares. So we have called H Labs, which is a think tank that put our employees together who wants to participate in it for sure, and not all of them. And then we have 1 month to educate about large language models, and 1 month on ideation about what ideas or what possible problems they want to solve, and 1 month on POC of solutions. And I also expand my vision about what kind of applications we could use. For example, for me, I seldom use those AI tools on a regulation. But as insurers, they have a really large need of deal with regulation. So they come up with ideas. They can use these two to specifically help on the regulation side. When they come up with some reports or when they generate some kind of documents, whether it applies or follows the regulation rules. So this is still in the ideation and the POC stage, but I think this is very interesting idea, so I share it all. Yeah, thank you.
So as an academic, I can use lots of examples. I don't have to represent a specific company. Lemonade is my go-to example for AI innovation, right? They are very disruptive in the things that they're doing with chatbots and computer visioning, right? So that's a good example to go to. But there's also lots of companies in the insurance space using chatbots, right? Probably everybody has one. Progressive has Flo you can talk to, right? You can talk to her just like she was on your TV. And not only have I seen insurance companies using chatbots for the customer interaction, but also employee interaction. So some of my students actually were interning at one of the insurance companies that we have here in Des Moines, and they were doing an employee side. So employees could go in and ask questions about their benefits at work and be able to get answers with their employee chatbot, right? So it could be on both sides. Usage-based driving is another good one, right? I think Allstate has DriveWise, I think is the one on that one. And then computer visioning is another important one, right? So instead of having to send an agent out to go take pictures and look at what happened, they can just send in the pictures and have the computer handle that. So those are all good examples of where AI is already being used in cool ways.
Great. So Dr. Mitchell, next question, I'll start with you, and kind of a two-part question. So what are the biggest misperceptions that insurance professionals have when it comes to the use of AI in our industry? And what do you think are the biggest opportunities?
So I think the popular press is scaring people about AI, and it's scaring everyone. There's a website, and it's not a perfect website, but there's a website called "Will Robots Take My Job?" So I made some notes of some specific jobs, just so you can know. If you check, and you can check your job later, but if you check for insurance carriers, they have an 82% risk level. If you check for claims adjusters, they have a 67% risk level, and actuaries are at 52% risk. So that's kind of scary, right? 80% risk for insurance underwriters, right? 82%. But if you look at the website, it does show like number of employees already employed and the number of jobs, and there's a huge gap. Even 10 years out, it has those projections, and there's still a huge gap. And it's also important to point out that while some of the tasks of these jobs may be automated, that's not the whole thing, right? It actually frees us up to do other things, and that's the intent, right? One of my favorite developers that I've worked with before, his goal is always to automate himself out of a job. He's like, his goal at work is to automate himself out of a job, but to be the only one who understands how he automated himself out of a job, right? So he still has the job because he's the only one that knows that code. But
Does he have like 7 jobs? Or
yeah, he might. But that's the goal, right? Is to be able to use these tools to free us up to do other things.
How about you?
Yeah, before I share my opinion, I want to also echo with Professor Lena that for me, I don't think AI will take your job. I think AI will augment your job. So it's not like you have the tools that will make all the decisions for you, and then you are work free, and then you lose your job. It's you have a tool that can assist your job. You make better decisions. You serve your clients better, and then you win in your job. So that's my perception in it. And having said that, I think the biggest misconception of understanding of AI is also coming from here. Using AI is not like there's no AI directly can incorporate into work with one step. There's always multiple steps, a lot of concerns and trial and errors when you can leverage the power of it. Even if in today's date, you can download the app, directly ask your questions, directly answer your questions, and you wouldn't do it in work because at least for our firm, there's a long debate and long time to decide whether we directly open the site, open the API, or not. So at the end, we still do it within firewall to ensure data security. So I would see leverage the power of AI and also use it wisely and have the right expectation of the steps you can leverage it.
Go ahead, Scott.
They gave a lot, so I'll add. On the jobs, I think augmentation is true, but I also believe new jobs are created, especially on new inputs. And as we all use these different platforms or AI platforms, that'll continue to develop. And we know that quant is out there and optimizing it's all going to be there. So there are advancements that are being made and will be made that will really help. From a misconception, I think it's, and the professor mentioned this, I don't want to be a mainstream media guy, but seeing the Terminator and how AI is taking over their cities, there's a misperception. Are there evil players, as we heard before? Yep, there are evil players taking advantage of any tool that a human has come out with. But the benefits of AI far outweigh it, and I find that insurance, and Nick, you mentioned this, we used to be famous for being fast followers. And I think this is moving so fast that you're unable to be a fast follower and win. You're going to get adverse selected against. You're going to fall behind. And so the misperception is the processes we used in the past can be used with this. You end up with death by PO, proof of value. And the like. I won't go on that, but that's really how I look at it.
one of the things I say is AI won't take your job, but you might lose your job to someone that knows how to use it, right? So, but you want to start with you on this next question. So obviously insurance is a risk management business, and given we're at a risk symposium, what are the biggest risks of artificial intelligence for our business? So you go ahead.
The biggest risks of artificial intelligence depends on the application, depends on how you use it. For example, if you use it for claim processing to automate the process, and you need to be aware of the data security, right? Like PII data, especially for some of the insurers. And if you use it for augment your modeling process, pricing model, risk model, and you need to be aware of the possible bias that's may involved, especially in pricing model. I heard of examples. I don't work specifically on those examples. For example, some automobile insurance companies, when they give prices, there may be gender or this, that considered, and whether this will go extreme in your large language model, like or deep learning models, then you need to be you need to evaluate it before you put it in production. And if you use it for the regulation, file, or report generation, you need to be careful about hallucination. So if it generates some kind of looking nice sentences, but wrong statements, and it's a big risk, right? So that's my understanding. I don't think there's number one risks for like an area in general. I think it depends on how you use it, how you leverage it.
Go ahead, Scott. Do you have any thoughts around some of the biggest risks?
Yeah, and this may go off on what your question is, but I apologize.
Go ahead.
So, no, I think it's not contradictory to what I just said, but I think one of the risks is if people actually do feel like, holy, you know what, we got to jump into this, not doing at least some good due diligence on the InsurTech or what you're doing, because there are InsurTechs out there that I'm not attributing ill will, but haven't done what they really need to do to be acceptable to a very regulated industry. And so when I say that, I say without the biggest risk is not asking that InsurTech, have you had an outside third party independently verify that your models aren't introducing bias to this? Having an independent third party review the data you're pulling into your system to see, are there pieces of data that may be proxies for disparate impact or other legal arguments. And by the way, there are good third parties out there that will do these analyses and give this certification that a carrier should want. There should be penetration testing at that InsurTech. So if they don't have a regular pen test, then that's a warning sign. They should be SOC 2 Type 2 certified. And I'm not totally against Type 1, but Type 1 is a moment in time, yes, you have these policies in place. Type 2 is a year's analysis that you actually comply with the policies that you have. And I think that's really important, and you should hold them to a higher level because of what we're doing. And demand policies and procedures and what's in place. So I go back to, it's not contradictory, but we have to be smart and not just jump out and say that's a great InsurTech, let's do this, without really looking to make sure those protections are in place, because the regulators, that's what they want. They want you to do that due diligence, and that's what you're seeing in the guidelines. They don't want you to get into the secret sauce, but do a good due diligence in asking those kind of questions.
Dr. Mitchell?
Yeah, everybody said bias, right? Even Linda on the last panel said AI bias is one of the top concerns. So I certainly agree with that. And my other point is related to what Scott was saying too. I think over-reliance on AI is a concern. And I'll just use an example from class today. So if you use a calculator, right, you put in some numbers, if you know how to do math, you have a pretty good idea if that calculator is giving you the right answer or not. Last week in my class, I showed my students how to use a pretty simple Microsoft tool, but they had to make all the decisions, and they did. And then this week, I let them use a more advanced Oracle tool that would make the decisions for them. And one of my actuarial science students this morning said, I like it a lot better when the tool does it for me. I'm Like, yes, everybody does, right? But the point is, you had to learn how to do it first and understand what you're doing and why, so that now when this Oracle tool is doing it, you know if it's right and you know why it's doing it like that, right? So that's the point about AI. Like, yeah, have it do something, but you better understand what it's doing so that you know if it's right or if it's not right, because it's not always right. It's still made by humans, right? So it's still going to have some error.
Thank you for that. Scott, next question is for you as a recovering lawyer, and you brought up regulation anyway. So regulators are starting to pay a lot of attention to these issues, as you well know. Kind of as you articulated, some states have started to put out positions on the technology and how it should be used, and even regulated, certainly when it comes to the models. What should the audience know about the current regulatory state? And if you're a carrier, how can a carrier kind of protect themselves from these issues?
Yeah, and so when you look at insurance, insurance is in its infancy really on this regulation of AI and ethical AI, which is out there. The NAIC did give some proposed guidelines that out there in some states like Colorado and California and Connecticut, Massachusetts, DC. We
Got the whole list, nice.
that have really come forward, but all of them are similar. And there's NIST, which is National Institute for Standards and Testing. They've advanced in their guidelines, and in producing their guidelines, they looked at the Federal Reserve, they looked at Europe, and really brought the best practices in. So it's a good way to measure, by the way, how you're doing as a carrier, but also if you're an insurtech, do you measure against the NIST standards, which are much more voluminous than the NAIC? And then there are adjacent industries that are advanced. We mentioned Federal Reserve, but there's the Fair Lending Act, employment, housing. You know, these are folks that have been dealing with psychometric testing and all this kind of stuff that can really come in, and you can read tea leaves and see where things are going. You know, I wish I could say that I invented the fact that you should get a third-party independent certification. I didn't. I mean, it's in New York City and it's elsewhere. And now it shows up in the NAIC guidelines. So, you know, there's enough concrete ways and regulations in other industries that we can tell where things are going. I always do turn back to NIST only because it's so comprehensive. And then from a carrier perspective is making sure not only you're in tune with what these regulations are, but you actually are dedicated, and your process involves what we were kind of just talking about, which is this company I'm about to do business with following these things? And if they can't prove it to my satisfaction, then you got to be willing to go away, because that insurtech knows better. Your folks know better. So there's a reason why. You know, I gave this similar comment in New York at a conference. And after the conference, I walked out, and my friends were the carriers, and my enemies were the insurtechs. Because now they knew they should probably go and invest some of that money that they've gotten through the venture world and get these compliance things done, rather than buying another booth at another conference.
And for the record, the New York deputy superintendent was in the audience there, if I recall. So, and he did like your comments. Dr. Mitchell, AI has gotten a lot of attention recently with the rollout of ChatGPT and other generative AI platforms. Like you mentioned, your students using it. How do you see advancements with generative AI and ChatGPT and those types of platforms impacting insurance? And how should insurers think about using these in their day-to-day operations?
Yeah, everybody should use them. There's a group called the Nielsen Norman Group, and they specifically study how humans interact with technology, right? So human factors, human-computer interaction kinds of studies. And they had a study last year that found that people who were using ChatGPT specifically were able to generate solutions faster in terms of their business writing and brainstorming and writing and editing and all of that. They were able to produce faster solutions with higher quality. So not only were they like getting all those tasks done sooner than they would have otherwise, but they were also having a higher quality than they would have independently too. And that's very interesting, right? That means that everybody should be, it's like a personal assistant. It's like your own personal assistant. In the same way that, like, you know, you can use calendar personal assistants to help you schedule your calendar, and you can use ChatGPT or some other generative AI tool to help you produce your your business writing deliverables, right? So taking advantage of these things, everybody in their day-to-day can help improve some of the tasks that they're working on, I think is really valuable, right? So even if you're not working on the data models and you're not working on the predictive analytics and computer vision, everybody in every position can be using AI to help them somehow. I would also say, you know, your phone number is one of like the most important data privacy pieces of information that we have. So ChatGPT takes that from you. So maybe you should use Google Bard instead. They already know everything. But this is just another side comment.
That's a good comment. Nearly every insurtech and vendor I have spoken to in the last year emphasizes artificial intelligence in their pitch. It's always in their pitch decks. I saw, my friend Jason here. I'm sure he's seen lots of those pitch decks. How much of that is real versus hype? And I guess, is AI embedded now in almost every platform we're looking at? And how should carriers think about that in their vendor management?
Sure, I think nowadays, if you don't mention AI in your pitch, if you don't mention large language models in your pitch, it seems you fall behind, right? I definitely wouldn't challenge my clients about, oh, are you true? Are you really use it? Or you're just, brag about it? That's definitely not something I do. But I typically talk with them about, oh, what is the applications you're using now? Anything that's really help you? So then I learn more about whether they are just in the exploring stage or they are really a master of it, use it in a high efficiency. So that's how I know whether it is just some illusions talking about it or there's a true use of it. But based on my conversations, limited number of conversations, I think there are true usage of it. It's not about a tech bubble. There's real efficiencies and efficacies you can leverage from it.
So in the audience and online, there's a lot of different carriers from different lines of insurance listening to this. So I think every line of insurance is going to be impacted in some way, and many in significant ways. How do you see this technology impacting the different lines of insurance? And do you feel that there's one line of insurance that may have the biggest impact? And Dr. Mitchell, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one that there's the biggest. I think it could play a role in any of the lines, right? I think anytime that you are looking at data analysis and prediction, claims processing, any of them that have those, then you can benefit from AI. So it's like all of them.
Okay. You?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Elena. I think the same because you have operation and you have marketing and all those are necessary for various kind of components, even like all of insurers. So yeah.
We're unanimous here. No, I think it'll be the speed at which it gets into the different lines. I think P&C made a lot of sense for it to act faster.
Commercial, yeah, right.
And then small commercial. Life will have its play and is doing some things now. But I think it's more pace than anything else. And I agree. I mean, everybody has operations, marketing, sales, and all these language models and all really help out a lot there.
All right, and this is my final prepared question, so if you have any, get ready. If you were in a carrier and not in your current role, how would you start leveraging artificial intelligence right now? And is there any wisdom you could leave our audience with? Scott, I'll start with you.
If I was at a carrier now, so going back to my days at a carrier, I'll bring it. Underwriting is so vital, and when I had life, you made underwriting decisions that frankly you wouldn't know if they were right or not for another 10, 15 or longer years. So yeah, I always dreaded having the Scott Ham years of underwriting. So I think getting more underwriting efficiencies, better predictions of the risks would be really important to me. And I think the operational efficiencies, because if I'm a carrier, I know I can get more efficient. And using it to help underwriting, using it to do find fraud is important. But I could really help my bottom line and become better by operationalizing a lot of this stuff where it does streamline.
I think what I heard you say is in the life industry, it's somebody else's problem because it'll be gone before it happens, right? No. Sorry.
It's an interesting industry.
No, it
right?
is. It very much is. Yes. It is.
You're dealing with mortality that was determined in 1990. You're like, okay. Well,
Yes. All right. You, how about?
At the beginning of this conversation, I mentioned that I had a background in quantitative psychology. So in ideal world, I have this kind of always thinking about I can design experiment. You know, there's a team, I let them use large language models, use different type of AI tools. There's a team, I put them into the control group. They use nothing. And I want to compare their efficiencies and efficacy. But in practice, especially in real business, that's usually not possible at all. They deal with different type of clients, they have different type of works, and it may be even unfair, like why this team can have better performance if they can using the large language models. At the end, they have better bonus, right? So yeah, just in ideal words in my mind. So, but if in reality, if I run like as a carrier, I possibly will definitely prioritize the sales efforts to customize and to depict the customer profiles first, to understand the clients better, understand the customers better based on their own characteristics, based on all kinds of data I could collect, and then create these profiles and push the information and serve them better. Yeah.
Dr. Mitchell?
So I love new technology, and so my inclination when new things come out is to adopt them and use them and take advantage of them. But that's not the right way to go about this. If I was an insurance carrier, the first thing I'm asking is, what is the business goal that I have, and how can I use this tool to get me to that goal, right? So identifying what your goal is and then how the technology can help you to achieve that goal, I think, is the first step. And then behind that, you prioritize, right? So maybe if it can help you with a couple different things, you prioritize where you get the most bang for your buck, the biggest ROI, and that's the route that you should go. I will say, like, kind of my parting comment on this, AI systems are developed by humans using rules that were decided by humans and data that was inputted and created by humans to make decisions that are acceptable to humans, right? So we're the key part of this, and we get to decide how we're going to use these tools and if we're going to use them the way that we want. So
That's a great.
Hey, Nick, that was a great way to end, because if you look at all the standards that are out there, one of the questions is, where is human involvement coming? And if you don't have it, like some people, oh, this is just running on its own. That's not a positive.
No, it's not. So
There's also a thing behind each AI, there's more labor behind it.
we do have time for a couple of questions. Are there any questions from the audience? Yep.
You kind of just stole my thunder on that one. I was about to ask, when AI is a buzzword, and I can be as cynical as I want, but how do insurance carriers or providers or whomever decide when they transfer from that human overlord to, okay, cool, this has been running long enough, the AI can make decisions on itself, specifically referencing like claims processing, something more situation dependent? And also, in general, do you ever see it going that way, or is it more of what I think it should be, more of a Jarvis model? It's a conversation of something that provides suggestions and options, and you can just tell it, hey, give me some gold.
Go ahead.
No, I actually think where you landed is where I would land, really based on what we just talked about. I don't think you can leave it to itself, especially in an area like you're talking about with claims. I think there are humans in the beginning, and there should be a human oversight to it, and checks and balances along the way. Just like you wouldn't let one employee probably take off and make all your claims decisions without some sort of check and balance, and that's how I kind of look at this. And I know the buzzword, but I do look at AI. Okay, we have a new employee, and let's treat AI the way it is. It's a very powerful employee, will help us a lot. But I'm a person that you just can't let it run alone.
Any other thoughts?
This is a question I actually asked one of my collaboration teams. They are advisors in Japan, and they have a process placed there, like for their associates program. Each associates, they rotate. Every week, they check their the entire client's websites twice and takes a few hours that day. So then I developed this tool to web script the website, can process the information, have some of the keywords extracted and the information selected for them. And then we have a testing stage about 2 months. Then I ask them, so do you think you can use this process or you still have the manual process? And then they said they would discuss separately, and after 1 week, so they replied to me, they will use this system. So I think I will answer 1 week. But there's definitely, depending on the complexity of the project, there's a POC, there's a testing stage. I think if a complex project, the POC, the testing will be much longer, probably a few months or even more than a year. But for small projects, it could be a few weeks, a few months. Then they will know whether it is trustworthy, it is good to use it, whether it, they don't need to spend extra time on it.
I have 2 quick comments on this. I think both things are happening, right? I think in some cases humans are observing and making the final call, and I think in some cases they're not. I was at a conference in May, and there was a Microsoft exec there who said, this is not new technology. We've been doing this for years. Nothing is new. The only thing that's new is the self-service aspect. And so that's what's getting the attention, right? Like now everybody has access to this technology. So that's one thing. And then my second comment about this is there's a lot of really exciting research happening in this space right now, talking about how do we manage AI? How do we be a team member? How can we be a team member with an AI bot or something like that working on our team and doing some of those tasks that make our jobs easier? And so I think that there's going to be cool stuff coming out about both of those things and how we're continuing to interact.
Any other questions? Probably have time for at least one more.
On a somewhat related follow-up on the same question, I'm glad to hear all the positives and optimistic views. We are talking about, I would say we're talking about a new technology and differentiating machine learning and deep learning, and the question becomes, when those decisions are made by AI, do we actually understand why AI made those decisions, right? So yes, humans designed them at some level, but then they sort of evolved without us actually understanding how eventually those decisions are made. So in the end, if that particular decision-making process creates more profits, do we actually go away from it and not apply it because we don't understand it? Or do we go after the profits, or do we say, well, we don't understand the process, we're just going to not use it? So it's the other side of the coin, right? The question of whether the technology is indeed new, and whether, yes, we've designed it, but the way that the amoeba was designed that eventually evolved into human being, and, understanding the amoeba, do we actually understand the human brain? So,
Who wants to tackle that?
I was in a quantitative finance conference a month ago, and we have a panel session specifically on model interpretability. That I think it's super related to your question, because if you cannot explain your model well on different aspects, right, then the end users may not feel comfortable at all to use it. And for sure, and I'll share a few examples. It's if I give, you use it to generate marketing materials. Even if you don't understand how the language models work to give you the marketing materials, you don't question, because you use it as a template to improve your work efficiency. And when you see the template, it makes sense to you, so you don't ask. But when I work with investment teams, I generate investment signal. It takes them half a year we have monthly meetings each month. So they ask me how the model works, what if it changes, and how the signals work, and they said. So it definitely depends on the application, but I see the obstacles. And also in that panel session from another asset management firm, the panel discussion shared example that they have a specific model governance team. The team wouldn't really understand all the models, but if you cannot answer their questions, they wouldn't use your model. So
their incorporation of new models, new signals are even slower and much slower than us because they are more strict on this side. Yeah, it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll echo a model governance process is really important. And I would argue that it really starts at the beginning in terms of your comfort level. What are you being thoughtful and intentional on what data is coming in, and more importantly, perhaps what data you're not collecting? That because you've had somebody look at it and say, you know what, that could be a proxy for X. If you're very diligent at that, you have a bit of a comfort level, but you also, all these platforms should have an explainability part to them. In fact, some of the regulations require explainability, so that the models you develop should have an explainability aspect, whether it be on a dashboard or another place in your platform, which will go through what exactly was behind that decision. And you know, for us, we actually review quarterly to make sure those explainabilities are making sense. We don't introduce new data because we've already cleaned up the data, so now we watch and see performance. And I think without that aspect, it would be really uncomfortable if I didn't have an explainability part to it to see what was behind the output.
I think your question is really important. I think it kind of relates back to the regulation question that Scott was talking about too. Technology regulation seems to be pretty reactive, right? So we don't have guidelines at the front of when we're like making these decisions, and it seems to follow later. And with AI, it's particularly accountability is a big question of that, right? Like who is going to be accountable for that? Who designed the system? Who owns the system? Like who's using the system? One of the best examples is the monkey in the jungle story. Did you guys hear this one? So somebody left his phone in the jungle, and a monkey came over, and they're very easy to use. Picked up, took a picture, took a selfie of himself. Who owns that picture? The monkey, because he took the picture. The person who owns the phone, it actually ended up going to court, and I think it was public domain is where it ended up being decided that owned that picture, right? But that's the question about AI. Who owns it? Who's accountable for what's happening with these systems?
So real quick, you brought up profits and got me thinking about a story of a company I was invested in a while ago. And during the pandemic, this was a company that created auto rate models in the UK and Israel, where it's doing business. And in the UK and even in Israel, you know, auto coverage is much more real time. They actually change their rates, which much more frequency there. This model, within 7 days of the pandemic hitting, realized that no one was driving and was telling the carrier, you should lower your rates a lot. Well, the carrier didn't do that. So, I mean, so back to your question, I mean, so it's an interesting issue because in that case, that model within 7 days knew that things had changed in the UK and that no one was driving, was giving off alerts that, hey, we should probably change our rates here. And the carrier's like, hell no, I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm making too much money. So anyway, I think there is all these issues that come up with this, so.
Question is if it said raise your rates, would it still?
You're dang right. Sorry, Mike.
Good. Well, thank you all. I think that'll be a wrap for our day one of this year's Risk and Opportunity Forum. I'd like to thank our panelists here. Round of applause. For those of you who are here in person, we have set up a cocktail reception. I encourage you to stay and chat and get to know each other and connect with students that are here and connect with each other. That's what this is for. Tomorrow we start at 8 a.m. and we will have 3 panels at 8, 9, and 10 a.m. covering a wide range of topics, so I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you.